Quickly, I'm Charlene Kalirgos. I'm an account executive here at Marquee 360. And then I also have on the call with me, Mia. Mia is going to be doing the demo portion of today's presentation. So really quick before we get started, just our schedule for today. We'll do some quick introductions and background on Marquee 360 for anyone who's not familiar, and then get to the Project Online retirement, which is the big announcement I know everyone is waiting to hear some options for, and then we'll do a quick demo for you guys. Right, so a little bit about Marquee 360. We're actually a Microsoft partner for project and portfolio management. And that just means that we've been trusted by Microsoft to work closely with their customers, supporting their investments that they have with Microsoft. And we focus specifically on the Power Platform and M365 solutions. So that's going to be your Planner, Microsoft Teams, and then things like Power Automate, Power BI, and Power Apps. Our team is actually previous Microsoft employees and have been in the Microsoft work management space for over 20 years now. So they've seen all the iterations of Microsoft work management tools, everything from Project Server to Project Online, which is now going away, to the more modern tools like Project for the Web and Planner. And like I said, the work that we do focuses a lot on the Power Platform. We work really closely with Microsoft's technology team during their development process, and Power Platform is really where they're focusing a lot of their research and development. That's just going to give you that low code, no code solutions so that you can kind of take some of the development work into your own hands. We also act as customer success advisors to their customers as well as ours. So providing things like training, workshops, in-depth requirement sessions to make sure that your needs are met and that everything that your team needs to be successful is in place. All right. That was just a quick little background on us, kind of the work we do, so everyone's familiar. We'll go ahead and jump right into it, and I'll pass it over to Mia to kind of talk through some of the options with this Project Online transition and what that means for you.
Thank you, Charlene.
Yep.
Everybody, my name is Mia. I'm a solutions architect at Marquee 360, so I typically help our customers throughout the project lifecycle. And today we're going to be talking about the latest news from Microsoft related to the whole project management area, which is that they're retiring Project Online. They did release a couple of dates. So the key dates there are October 1st, yesterday, that they're no longer going to be getting new customers for Project Online, but September 30th of 2026 is our main date. That will be the official retirement date. So a little bit less than a year to prepare. What we'll talk about today is what this whole thing means, right? And then we'll also talk about the more exciting part of this announcement, which are the transition options. We've got a few here that we can talk about. All right, so with Project Online reaching its end of life, there are two main paths that we'll talk about. The first, as you'll see here, is moving over into Microsoft Planner. We're going to spend a couple of slides talking a little bit about what Planner is, because it was released as one thing, very light task management, but there's also so much more that can be done with it, and it's grown a lot over the years. And then one of the other options is Project Server. So Project Server, of course, has been around for quite some time. I still remember how excited I was to move from Project Server over into Project Online. But this is still one of the options that you have to move to. And it depends a lot on what your needs are. We will definitely be able to talk with you about that if you need a little bit of guidance and help making this decision. I want to point out, though, that when it comes to Project Online and Project Server, there are a lot of parallels between the way that we build out Planner. We take Planner and we extend it with our PPM 360 app. So as you'll see in this graphic, a lot of what you've got in Project Online is also available in Planner. Now, when it comes to this big announcement, especially talking about how Project Server is one of the options that we can go to, it's important to recognize kind of why Microsoft made this decision and why we're moving in this way. It's really just that the architecture part of Project Online, it has certain limits when it comes to innovation and integration. Those are some of the things that Charlene just talked about, right? That we are pushing forward with that innovation and integrations. And that starts to help your entire organization to work in a much smoother way. So part of what Microsoft is focusing on is allowing you to do more with integrations and have more innovation. So this is an exciting change, but we do want to make sure that we spend today talking about what your options are. So the first thing we want to talk about is just the new planner. There are people that have seen Planner, when it first came out, it was meant to be able to quickly create a task, assign it to somebody, and be able to track that something's being done. Those could be very general, but they were very task oriented. And what Microsoft has done with the new Planner is they've enhanced it greatly. Now there's a lot in Planner that you can do to fully manage tasks. There are dependencies, which we didn't always have. There are plenty of different options within each planner task that really make it easy to use. So it's, of course, simple. It is very flexible. And then as you'll see here, it's scalable. So what we're going to do in our demo today is we're going to look at how we've scaled up Planner by adding our PPM 360 application to it. And it's also intelligent. So a lot of the things that are happening innovation-wise now are related to AI. So that works very well with Planner. And we'll also see how it works with PPM 360 later. One of the things that we want to make sure to talk with you about is that when it comes to migrating from Project Online to Planner, it is an undertaking, right? And we can understand that you might have some anxiety related to it. But one of the things that makes this an easy, quick, and straightforward process with us is that we have developed a tool that we call Migrate 360. Migrate 360 allows us to specify what you want to carry over from Project Online into Planner. And then once we specify those items and those artifacts, we just go ahead and run the migration application, and it will bring over the projects. It pulls in the schedules, the issues, the risks, so all those different project artifacts, the documents, so that way everything that you had in Project Online, you can still have in Planner and PPM 360. So this Migrate 360 tool is a really great thing, and it helps us to quickly move through the migration steps for you. There is another application we've developed in-house. It is called Sync 360 or Planner Sync 360. Now, this is for our customers that really did like the experience of working in Microsoft Project Professional, the desktop app. With that, for those of us that have spent a lot of years getting to know how to use it and we've gotten that all perfected, it can be a little bit scary to move away from that desktop app. With Planner Sync 360, you can still use Microsoft Project, the desktop app, and then it will sync with your PPM 360 or Planner schedule. So there's a screenshot here that just shows you kind of the menu part, but what you can see is you can update your tasks in Project Professional and then publish them over to PPM 360 or Planner. Or if you've made updates to your schedule from Planner, you can bring those into the Project Professional app so that then you can continue to make updates. So if you and your team are really happy with the desktop app, you don't have to leave it behind. All right, so those options are two of the options that help to make these transitions a lot easier. I do want to just pause here for a moment, just so that you know that if there's anything that you need as far as help making a decision, if you have a situation that you'd like to talk with us about and see what we recommend to make things easier for you and your team, we would be happy to have a consultation with you. Um, I can't stay on this slide forever, so I did put these email addresses in the chat too, just so that you know. All right, and then I see there's already a question in the chat. It's about how many lines can be moved into Planner. So there is a limit on the number of rows. I believe it's 3,650. But also, Microsoft does have a site where they list all of the limitations of Planner, or I shouldn't say limitations, but the boundaries. So how many tasks we can have, how long in duration a schedule will be. So all of those are listed out, and I can share that link when we share the recording as well. All right. So the next thing that we'll talk about a little bit is PPM 360. This part, I'll keep it short because our demo is going to be all looking at PPM 360. But because I know a lot of you know what Planner is, and of course, Project Online and Project Server, but PPM 360 is what we've built as our pre-configured solution to extend Microsoft Planner. Every time that Microsoft Planner comes up, the first thing that comes to mind is tasks because it is very task focused. We, of course, recognize that when you're running a project, you need to focus on a lot more than just the tasks. Those are extremely important. So, of course, we're extending Planner, not just replacing it. But with this, we want to make sure that you also have a place to document your risks, your issues, your ideas for new projects. We make sure that there are reports that are included. Power Automate is what we use also to automate some of the processes that become pretty tedious for the PMs, but also for things like workflows, right? Anytime we need an approval, that's something we can easily set up in Power Automate. And if we need to tweak an approval that's set up, it's pretty easy to do that. Everything with Planner is, of course, stored in the cloud. We do integrate with Microsoft Teams to enhance your collaboration and communication. We also use Power Apps to extend multiple aspects of what you get out of the box with Planner. So if you need things like timesheets, right? If you need resource management, same with ideation and financials, we do use Power Apps for those things. And using the Power Platform is great for you as a customer because it is something that's really easy to use. It's low code and no code. So if your team needs to go in and make some updates, we do also provide administrator training so that you have that comfort level there. All right, so that's a quick look at PPM 360. It's Planner plus everything else you need to move throughout the full project lifecycle. And then here is a list of, what PPM 360 includes. Looking at this and thinking about Project Online, right? There is a lot that we see here, our project artifacts from the project site, our resource management, and resource planning, timesheets. So with PPM 360, we can have all of those things. All right, so without any further ado, we'll go ahead and start the demo portion of things. We'll take a look at PPM 360, and one of the things that I want to make sure that we discuss is what the equivalent items in Project Online are in PPM 360. There are a lot of similarities, right? These are all on the Microsoft platform, so a lot of it should be fairly intuitive. But what's great here is that there's a lot more that we can add or customize when it comes to the PPM 360 Power App. So I'm going to start out on our homepage, okay? Notice here the menu on the left. We use that to navigate to different parts. So it's a lot like the quick launch menu in Project Online, right? So we can use this to click to different areas. On our homepage, we do have different dashboards. And I want to make just a quick point here that when you see this, I'm showing our out-of-the-box solution, but every implementation includes requirements gathering. So if there are different charts you want to see here or any type of different data, maybe even Power BI reports, that's something we would capture during the requirements gathering phase, and then we would build it based on what you need. So a lot of this is customizable. If when we're going through the demo, you have any questions about what can or cannot be customized, feel free to add those to the chat and then we'll answer that. All right, so we're on our homepage, which is equivalent to the PWA homepage. When we are starting at the beginning of the project lifecycle, for us, a lot of times what we provide for our customers is a way to capture and enter in ideas for new projects. We do this with Project Server, we do it with Project Online, and we do it with PPM 360. So all three of those are compatible with our project requests that we're going to look at right now. So what we'll see in a moment is our project intake portal. We've used a version of this, like I said, with Project Server, Project Online, and Planner. So no matter what you choose to use right now, there is a version of this that is compatible with it. This is customizable. So we're going to look at is the out of the box version today. It does show us a list of our different requests. We can get a sneak peek of some of the information in here. And if we're intrigued and want to know a little bit more, we can open up that request and view the full details. Essentially for us, we create these forms with different pages, and then based on what information you need or what information your approvers need, we go ahead and build this out. So the pages here are pretty straightforward. The request information is all describing the request that we're making. So what would this project be about? Who would the sponsor be? What department and where's the location? And what value does this bring to us? So this is where we would describe all of that. In the project details page, this is more about the project itself. So if we do this project, when will it start? Who would be the project manager? That type of information can fit here. There's also a way to enter in scoring. A lot of times when we're taking in these requests for new projects, we need a way to kind of compare them. So what we do is we add your business drivers here, and then each business driver will have a rating. When you select the ratings, you'll see that the priority score gets calculated. So it helps you to know, just looking at that priority score, how closely aligned with your company's overall values this request is. And then there's also a place to add attachments if you need to. So this can always be saved as a draft to come back to later, or it can be submitted. Once it's submitted, it does go through an approval process. Now, in the slides, we talked about some of how we extend using Power Apps and Power Automate. This is, of course, a Power App that we're looking at here, but then also what we do for the approval process is we use Power Automate. So with our customers, we see a lot of different possibilities. Sometimes it goes to a set group for them to approve it. Sometimes that group, we just need a majority. Sometimes only one needs to approve. All of those different rules and those different paths to approval we can build into the flow. The request for approval normally goes through Teams and through Outlook. And that way, whoever is set to approve this, they'll get notified, they can review the request, and they can choose if they want to approve, reject, request more information, or maybe even place this on hold. So lots of options there, but again, everything that we're seeing in this area is customizable. Right, so this is our first part of the project lifecycle, collecting those ideas for new projects. With this application, there's a lot of flexibility too. There's a link to any new project that's created. There's a link back over to the main homepage where we just were. There's a nice search option. So the flexibility that we get with Power Apps, right, it is already a lot more than what we get with something like Project Online. So again, this could work with Project Online, Project Server, or PPM 360. All right, I'm taking us back over to our PPM 360 homepage. We're going to fast forward a little bit. Let's say that our request was approved, and now we've got a nice new project. So what we'll do is we'll access the projects. In Project Online, we would navigate over to the Project Center, right? We would be on our PWA homepage. We would use our quick launch on the left to go over to projects. Okay, and then that opens up the Project Center where we see a list of all the projects. We've got the ribbons at the top, of course, that allow you to add in filters and change your views. In PPM 360, we instead navigate over to the plans because it's based on Planner. And here is where the version of the Project Center is. This is where we see a list of all of our projects. There are views that are preset by administrators, just like in Project Online and in Project Server. But beyond that, the flexibility that we get with using a Power App here is that each individual end user can go ahead and edit their columns, they can edit their filters, and essentially modify their view in any way that they like. That's one of the things with Project Online and Project Server is that, we can play around with the columns, but we needed an admin to put those columns into view first. Here, anybody can add their columns in and they can add the filters that they need and come up with their view that they like. Once somebody creates a view by modifying one of the existing ones, they'll get options to save it as their default. They'll get options to save and name it for themselves. And it's a lot more flexible. So that part is really great. I want to go back over to the default view, the all plans timeline. This is kind of like the Gantt chart we see in the Project Center, but we can interact with it a lot more. Just hovering over these, we can see, actually just looking at these, we can get an idea of the overall health. We can hover over these to see more details about them. And then of course we can open a project from this page. So super easy to use and very informative just at that first glance. All right. Now in Project Online, we open up a project and we've got essentially two parts to it, right? We've got the top level. So we'll look at this as we talk about it. But in Project Online, we've got the top level where we have our project detail pages and our schedule. But then we also have the project site, and that's where all of our risks, our issues, our decisions, whatever list you've decided to use, those are all listed there. One of the things that is always challenging when we are implementing Project Online is getting people comfortable with getting to the project site and then navigating away from it, right? Sometimes you try to navigate away and it reloads that project site. So in Project Online, we've got kind of the two levels. Once we open a project, we switch through the PDPs, and then we go to the project site and we go through those tabs. What is so much nicer here is that everything is here on one level. So all these tabs, right, we've got essentially the ones that would match project detail pages or PDPs. But then on the right side, we've got what's equivalent to the different lists, the SharePoint lists you would see on a Project Online or Project Server SharePoint site. So everything's here and really easy to access. At the top also, there's a workflow. Of course, we had workflows in Project Online and Project Server. Those were built using SharePoint Designer 2013, which is, not being used as much. And I think there's an end date for that coming up in April of 2026. So what we do here with these workflows is first, you can decide if you want approvals included or not. If you do want approvals, we build those with Power Automate. So again, we have the flexibility to define precisely how that goes. So we've got the workflow at the top. You can decide if you want different data steps in here, or if you want the PM to confirm that they've also, updated the schedule and notified the team. Those can all be checklist items here. Once they've completed all those steps, they submit to the next stage. And then based how we built the workflow, it continues on. With the tabs here, the summary tab is where you would have most of your general information. A lot of it's populated from that intake request that we looked at earlier. Once we collected all that nice information on the intake request, we do typically carry a lot of that over into the project so that your team or your project manager doesn't have to redo that information. So what we'll see on the summary tab is general information. Notice also programs and portfolios. One of the things that is easier here is to associate a project with a program and or a portfolio. So I'm going to take away this program. And if I press enter here, we'll see a list of the programs that we have in our system. So what would happen here is that you would have someone on your team that is maintaining portfolios and programs. And this is, I should say, if you choose to use them, right? If you do choose to use programs or portfolios or both, then this programs link here, this is where all the programs are managed. A new one is created from here. And then once you create a new one, you can open it up and start to see the details. And what's great here is that it combines information. There's information that we capture at the program level, same with portfolios. So we're defining our program here. We're describing, who the owner and manager are, what our goals are. That's all here. And then with some of the other tabs, we get to see information about the portfolio or program alongside information that rolls up from the projects within that program. So in this example, we get to set our KPIs for the program itself. So in this case, it's all green. But at the bottom, with the project count, we get to see that there's one active project in this program, and it's at risk, right? So then we might need to update one of these up here, but we get to kind of see these side by side. Same with financials. On the left side, we see what we've determined are the budget, benefit, the ROI for this program, right? And on the right side, we get to see the roll up from the projects. So in this case, the projects that are part of this program, their combined budget is 50,000. And we get to compare that directly with our program budget that we've set up with. So we know here we're okay, but we only have one project here. We're going to have to be careful and keep an eye on this as we add more. So being able to see this program level information and the project level information can be really helpful. And we will, of course, see that in the reports as well. And then, of course, being able to see the timeline here, right? Especially for a program, we've got projects that are all being done to meet a common goal. It is nice to be able to see those on a timeline and know like where everything is as far as the dates go. And then this is a list of our projects. We only have the one project in this program, but that should be enough to show you how that looks. And then what's nice here also is that a lot of these things that we see are active links, right? So we don't need to go back and re-navigate to places to get to this project. I just clicked on the link and we're right back in the project now. All right, there is also, if you need places for a business case or a project charter, those are all here. There is a place for status updates. So again, this would be on the project site before. What we have now is a list where we can see week to week. And every time that we open one of these, I'll open one here so we can see what it looks like. First, all the fields here we get to define with you. So during requirements gathering, that's when we would talk about what you need to see. There are different behaviors for the status indicators. In Project Online, of course, we could calculate these so that they are, we would often do the overall is based on the other selections here. So if anything is yellow, overall is yellow. If anything is red, overall is red. We can still do that here, but we can also take it a step farther. If we need schedule health to be based on the health of the tasks in the schedule, right? We can set this up to look at certain criteria that will update the schedule health to be yellow or red based on the schedule. Okay. With budget, we can set it up so that if we have a risk or issue that it's categorized as a budget issue, right, then that can carry over into here. So we can take this one step farther than we could with Project Online. And then here, you'll see there are the places for narrative summaries. Now, a couple things I want to point out is that we have added in automations to help the PMs with the tasks that are most tedious. One thing that happens a lot with our customers that we heard from their feedback is that every week when they go to make their updates to the status report, that there are some weeks where not a lot has changed. One of the things we did is we added this copy status report option. So if I'm going to create my status report for week 4, and a lot is similar to week 3, and I just need to make a couple of tweaks, selecting yes here will copy this entry for me, and then I can go ahead and make my tweaks without having to rewrite or copy paste all of the information that's already here. And then also sharing a status is sometimes, has been challenging for some of our customers. So what we built for everybody is this submitted to option. Here you can enter in a name. And once you save and close, that'll kick off the Power Automate flow, and it will generate a nicely formatted email that contains everything in your status. All right. So those kind of shortcuts are something that's possible with an application like this that we couldn't necessarily do with Project Online. In Project Online, we did capture the status, and we could show that in a Power BI report. Here, we can take that a couple steps further. With financials, there are a couple ways that we can handle this too. we can keep it very straightforward, like what we see here. So these are the fields that we needed to roll up at the program and portfolio levels. And here, there are a couple fields where the PM's making entries, some are calculated. So this can be very simple. It can also be a lot more complex. I have an example that is open here already. So if you need to capture costs, actuals, budget, forecast based on different line items, right? That's something that we can add in here. So here for the budget, each thing that we're going to spend on, we can go ahead and add a new line item, define that line item, and then here we just type in what our budget is. Same with the actuals and the forecast. The totals actually roll up at the end here, and then they also roll up at the top. So when we're looking at forecast for the project, it's a sum of everything here. We can also extend this further to interact with another financial tracking system and pull in things like the purchase requisitions, invoices, and purchase orders. So we would work really closely with your finance team on that to define, if it's a one-way sync, how often it should sync. And that way, what it does is it really helps the PM to have a better idea of what's going on with their project financially. So options are available for that part. I want to go to some of the items that would be on the project site. So the risks are one. We also have an automation built here, and we've built in some customized views. So you can view these as cards, very much like the look and feel of Planner, where you can expand the card, or you can open up a card to go ahead and edit the items there. When we open up a risk, we're essentially going to see a form that's filled out that details out this risk or defines it. One thing that we heard a lot about when we were putting this together, especially during the Project Online um, projects, is that they are in Project Online when you have a risk and it becomes an issue, you have to separately create that issue, right? What we've done is we've added an automation so that if our risk does become an issue, let's say that this hurricane season does end up affecting us and we need to lock the issue, we can use this convert option here. It will create the issue for us, and based on what you want us to carry over, it'll carry over information from this risk into that issue. So it cuts back on us having to create something new, and it makes sure that we have a better chance of getting that issue in there quickly. That way people looking at reports and looking at other things know that that's out there. Right. So there are a lot of things like that. And when we do an implementation, one of the things that we talk about with you a lot is what those repetitive tasks are for your team. If there is anything that you feel like you're doing over and over again and it's a pain, that is where we would love to come in with a Power Automate flow or with anything that we can do to make that easier. All right. And then that helps us to have better data, helps the PMs to spend less time repeating those same tasks, and it's good for us all around. Issues are very similar to what we saw with risks. We've got the grid view here. We can toggle over to, we could open up an item or create a new item and define it on the form there. Changes are very similar also. And here, this also has a workflow built in when we're ready to submit this. So a change should typically be something that affects, your project in a significant way. So maybe it affects your resource assignments by about 20%, right? You want to be able to document that and document that you've requested for approval and that you got the approval. So the way we do that here is when we have this assigned to somebody and we go ahead and change the approval to requested. After we save and close, it will generate a request for the approver. They'll have a link sent to them so they can go and view the project, make sure that they're happy with everything, and then they can go ahead and give their answer. So we're tracking all of that here in the Changes tab. I see a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to pause for a moment so we can talk about those. All right, so the first question is if the budget numbers are manually entered or if they're pulled in from the timeline. So that is a really interesting question. It's interesting because there are multiple ways that it can go. With the numbers that we see here on the financials tab, and even in this version of the financials tab, these can pull in from other places, right? And with the timeline, there are certain things that we can do. Oops, not this one here. With the tasks that we capture, what we typically do if we need to capture anything at the task level, like task level cost or anything like that, one, we could roll it up to the financials. We could also capture those costs and display them any way you need, and also have them roll up into reports. So you've got those options there. And then the second question is everything you're using with Microsoft Project Desktop? So right here, the items that I'm using are not connected to the Microsoft Project Professional, the desktop app. What we can connect, and this goes back to one of the slides that we saw earlier, is we can connect it so that this schedule here, if you would prefer to update the schedule in Project Professional, I'm going to go back a tiny bit. Yes. So if you would prefer to update your scheduled tasks in Project Professional and maybe aren't as comfortable with the planner interface yet, that's where we would install this and not this. This one, Planner Sync 360. And this is a screenshot that actually shows up in the Project Professional application. So we add this in your Project Professional, and this is where you could open up your project, update it, and then go ahead and sync it back over to that planner interface that we're seeing on my screen right now. Right, I hope that answered your questions. If not, continue to type into the chat and we'll get to talk about those. All right, we were talking about the project site items and lists that we have in Project Online and what the matching items are here in PPM 360. So we talked about the changes. There are also decisions, so we can track those decisions that we make, in almost every meeting. And then the lessons learned also. Keeping this front and center helps us to make sure that as we go through the project, we're collecting those. These can also be built into the Power BI report, so you can pull those in. That way, if we start another project, and let's say that we want to look at other projects before us that were in the same business unit, or other projects that had the same sponsor or were part of the same program, right? We can use that to zero in on the lessons learned that can affect us the most for our specific project. So that's another powerful option there. That's not really as easy to do with Project Online to create a new list and then sync it with Power BI. You've got to do a couple of extra steps to do that. But here, everything's on the Power Platform, so it's a lot easier. I want to come over to tasks and make sure we get a look at that. I'm not going to spend a terrible amount of time here because we do have other webinars where we do walk through Planner and how to create and update and maintain tasks. We do have on YouTube a whole channel with a lot of those videos there. And if there's a specific video that you would like a link to, we are happy to provide that. So just reach out with the emails that are in the chat and we'll make sure you get what you need, or we can also set up a demo with you. But essentially with Planner, there are all these different views. It's super flexible, so we can create our own new fields if we need to. There's an out-of-the-box baseline that Microsoft added. This allows you to just track, the changes basically. There's conditional coloring, so if we need to call attention to certain tasks, we can do that. A lot of times in Project Professional, the desktop app, I'm going ahead and just like adding a color from the Format tab, but being able to add conditional coloring helps a lot. There are board views also, and with board views, it's all about how you group your tasks. One of the things that Planner shines with is giving you different ways to categorize your tasks. And that way you can make sure that you're focused in on the task that you need to pay attention to. So you can group those by bucket, by assigned to, as we see here, by progress. right? And then you can just drag and drop. So it's really quick and easy to make updates. If you're using agile projects, right, there is a grouping for sprints. We have a webinar dedicated to that as well. And then there are also goals that you can set up. So these might vary by project, right? But you have the flexibility here to really group these in a way that is meaningful to you as the PM. I'll show the timeline view also, just because this view is really nice. This one is an interactive Gantt chart. So we can open up our tasks from here, right? We can open a task from any place. We can view the task history, right? So all the changes I've made to this task, they're all logged here. There are plenty of notes that we can add in, checklist items, our custom fields are here, dependencies. So all that's here for any task, no matter where we open it, no matter which view. But then also here, we can interact with these bars here. So we can extend the duration of a task. We can reschedule a task by dragging and dropping. We can also add in dependencies. So it helps a lot to be able to select, the end of this task or the finish of this task, and then link it with another task. So really quick and easy. If we need to do more detailed dependencies, like a start to start with lead time or lag time, right? Those options exist here as well. But if we need to do something really quickly and visualize it, this view is perfect for it. All right, there's a goals view. There's also an assignments view, which is a lot more like project professional. If we need to say, on this task, let's say that new task A, we've got 2 of us assigned here, right? If we need to view it here and split up those hours so that in this case, maybe Nirpa's got 10 hours and I've got 30 hours, I can do that kind of breakdown right in this view. Right, so lots of great things. We also have added in baselines. A lot of our Project Online and Project Server customers really do depend on taking baselines. It is best practice, and what we add here is an interface that will essentially copy over all the tasks, but focus on these different columns. So these columns could be related to costs, right? In this case, they're more devoted to duration and effort. I'm going to minimize this menu. And I just wanted to kind of mention there are different columns here, right? So if we need to scroll over and see those other columns, we can do that. These are all the different views, so we can set up any view with the columns that you need. Taking a baseline is super easy. All you have to do is click on yes. So a couple less clicks than what we had to do with Project Online and Project Server. And then it'll tell you what your current baseline is and which baseline you're viewing is here. So Project Online, Project Server, they give you 10 plus baseline 0. We start out with 15, so it's a pretty nice start. All right. We've talked a lot about the project level data. I want to bring out some of the other key points. Because Microsoft's focus is on innovation and integration, I want to make sure that we get to see some more of that. First is that I told you that we integrate with Microsoft Teams. So I just wanted to show here, there is a team for the project that we were looking at. The project details tab is going to show us every part of the project. And then project tasks is going to show us just the tasks themselves. This looks like it's taking a minute to load. And then I clicked right as it was about to finish loading. But what this will do, everything we saw in the browser just now, we'll also see in Teams, and we'll be able to update it through Teams as well. So the benefit here with this type of integration is that if I'm already in Teams, let's say that I am in with Charlene about this project, then I can quickly come over to the project under the Teams section and make my project updates. You don't have to go over to the browser if you were already in Teams. Okay, and then for the end users that are assigned to these tasks, they can come straight over to project tasks and then just see the tasks themselves without having to go through the other tabs and everything like that. So that's a benefit here with the Teams integration. Okay, I'm not going to wait for that. And then the other thing I wanted to show when it comes to innovation is the integration with AI tools, right? There are different parts that come more out of the box from Microsoft, like the Form Assist that we'll see here. And this allows you to, drag and drop a file that will populate some of the items. So a lot of our customers have had some fun playing with this, but if they're going to create a new risk, they might drag in a file or text from an email and then have that here to populate and create the risk for them. And at the very least, it gives them a nice head start on that risk, right? It'll populate some of the fields and then they can just review it. So lovely shortcut there. And then this can be hidden, can be collapsed, it can be made bigger. So you can choose. And then Marquee 360 has also created an app called Prodigy. And this is like a PM assistant. So when I open up Prodigy, we keep it right on this top menu here. When I open this up, look at some of the prompts that are here now. What this will do is it'll help me to take a deeper look at whatever project I have open. So if my boss calls me or IMs me and says that she wants an update on, the task status, instead of going over to the schedule and kind of looking through things and making sure I have all the updates and all that, what really gives me a head start is being able to just ask a question here. Some people are using this to create their tasks, right? We do start out with templates and things like that, but if we need to add more tasks based on a change request, let's say, or if we need to, an example that's in this same project, the business case here, I actually generated through Prodigy. So I just asked it to write a business case based on the information that I already have entered in this project, and it put all of this together for me. So I went through and just read it, formatted a little bit, but it's a great way to get quick insight into your project. And that way, a task that would have spent a lot more time kind of digging through things and, writing it up for somebody, it's a lot of that's taken care of for you here. All right. So a great way that AI can assist with your project work. And then, of course, with all of this, when we're talking about insights from our project or insights into our project, we have to talk about Power BI. There's a link that we include to Power BI here. I have it open in a separate tab already. And what we'll see here is our Power BI report pack. We have a report pack that we've specifically configured to go with PPM 360, and that's what we'll see here. So the first page is related to the requests. Remember at the very beginning of the project lifecycle, we entered in those requests for new projects, and those all roll up here. So as we're looking at what's in the system and what we're going to do next, we can use this to help us make those decisions. The priority score that was calculated for each request displays here. So if we need to sort those in order so we can see which has the bigger impact for us as an organization, we can. Also, if we want to notice that, some of these were submitted, but nobody's approved them yet or rejected them yet, what we can do is look here. In our case, the project sponsor is the one that is approving or rejecting. So we know exactly who to follow up with here. All right, so it helps us to see the overall view of everything and know that we are on track. With the portfolio health also, this is a quick way. The portfolio level reports here, they're not really portfolio dedicated. It's really just every project in your whole portfolio of projects. It's every project in the system. And then if you want to focus on a specific portfolio or program, you can using the filters here. But at a glance here, we can quickly tell who needs help, right? And then we can get down to the bottom of what help they need and make sure that they are getting that help. So we can start to move a lot more of these towards green. We know exactly where help is needed looking at this. And portfolio dashboard is more general. Some of our financial information will roll up here. Some of that summary tab information will be here too. With the timeline, it helps us when trying to think about when we can start a new project. Those intake requests, we often put in there fields to say if this does become a project, when should it start? When should it finish? Lining those dates up with a timeline view like this help us to not only see where we are in relation to today, but also we can tell which PMs have availability. So if we've got a new intake request that's very exciting, we are going to start it right away, we can look right here and get an idea of who's available, right? Again, you can hover over these. So we know Nrupa's in the middle of a big project. We probably won't ask her now, but if we look at this, we can see that I appear to be open. So I'm open to this new project that's starting right now. So we can really make some informed, great decisions here. I'm keeping an eye on the time and I want to leave some time for questions. So I'm going to kind of switch over to some of the project level reports. The project status report, we did talk about in the project that we could email out a copy of the status report that is nicely formatted, and it takes 1 second to have it actually show up in the other person's inbox. So that's all nice, but we also do have the Power BI version as well. This will pull in information from different parts of the project. And then there's a risk dashboard, an issues dashboard, a dashboard for changes. A lot more recently, we've been getting a lot more requests to make in the lessons learned report, right? So that can be really helpful. There's resource reporting, and there are two ways that we report here. One is based on assignments. So we can look here at Erin, we can expand this to see what project she's assigned to, and then we can expand it more to see the tasks. We get a really full picture here, not just of when she's scheduled, right? Because sometimes things go on hold, some things get done early. But what we can see here is that there is still some outstanding work, and we know that whatever we plan for Erin coming up, we do need to account for these 16 hours that she is scheduled to work on. And then with availability, this is more for future planning. Each project plan has a place where a PM can go and say, I need this resource, Allie, let's say, for, let's pull out this project. Let's say that this PM have gone into their project and they've said they need Allie's time 25% of the time for these few months. Okay, so that all rolls up here. This was probably completed way back in January or maybe even in 2024. But with this, if we have an idea of how long we need a person or a role, we can enter that in the project. And this helps us to do some of that planning going ahead. In Project Online, in the Resource Center, there are some great views there that give you charts with the capacity line and then what's actually assigned. So there is some of that still here in these reports. We've also had some customers moving from Project Online that really did miss some of that resource level reporting that comes just on that resource page. So that is something that we can incorporate into Power BI too if you are missing the look and feel of those. And then there are some task level reporting as well. All right, so I'm going to go back over to our homepage for PPM 360. I hope that talking through this has helped to ease any anxiety you might have about Project Online and its retirement. But try to keep in mind that you do have options. If you really like some of the things that came with Project Online, like that desktop app, we can install our sync app for you, or you might want to move over to Project Server. Again, if you need to talk about any of that, I did put the email addresses in the chat so that you can reach out to us and we would be happy to consult with you and talk about what options you have. And go a little bit farther. With the offerings that we have, PPM 360 and that extension of Planner, of course, is an option, and that's what we spent most of our time on today. But we also do help with things like planner training sessions. We do workshops also where we can take a deep dive into your requirements and talk about exactly what would fit your team. Remember, we also have that migration tool, so it really helps to make migrating from Project Online into PPM 360 with Planner, and it makes it very easy. And then, of course, remember, we have our Project to Planner sync application. So if you really like Planner and PPM 360, but you also really like that desktop app, you can still use both if you'd like. So there are all kinds of options. If you have any questions, we are happy to talk with you more about them. And just remember that the purpose of this change is to help us all with innovation and integration. So we saw a lot of great examples of that today. And if you have anything in mind for your company, we'd be so happy to help out. Does anybody have any questions? I actually just noticed one in the chat from Emily. It's about the resource assignments. If the report is able to pull from integrated Microsoft project desktop file, it is. As long as you have like our sync app, and it'll sync the information you enter into Microsoft Project, the desktop app, into PPM 360. The assignments will come over as well, and then we'll be able to use those for the reports. Does anybody else have any questions?